As I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I take a look at my life and realize there's nothing left. Cause I've been blasting and laughing so long that even my mama thinks that my mind...
Okay, thank you very much for joining me today. Today's video is going to be about murders that I think are linked to my grandfather's. When I was going through my family's documents, I came across this newspaper article from the Daily Mail on June the 24th, 1991. You can see here the police at the time had been speaking to the press, and for them to leak information, there must be something behind it. They've linked 2 other murders to my grandfather. So this got me thinking with my research, and on the next page you can see what I'm going to start to allege. Now, Mr Robert Calvary is obviously one of London's most famous murderers. People will already be aware that he was a Mason and other connections, but let me elaborate shortly. On the next page, you'll see some more information about Mr Robert Calvary, or God's Banker's murder. I'd encourage the reader to do your own research and please look up what I'm about to explain. So on the next page here, you'll see the conclusion of the trial still is it's unsolved. So no one has been convicted of his murder. On the next page, you'll now see Mr Robert Calvary, and basically the similarities will start to appear shortly. My grandfather knew the Pope and the Queen and high society. He also knew his attacker. He was a high financier, just like Robert Calvary. My grandfather was the treasurer for all of the United Kingdom's Freemasons' money. They were both in the Air Force of their respective countries, and both on special duties. The liquidator after Mr Calvary is the same company that placed the trustee in one of these offshore islands in my family's affairs, and we've never got any money. Obviously you can see that there was corruption involved with Mr Calvary. His murder was called a suicide twice until the family fought to get it confirmed as a murder. Similar to my grandfather, his murder is unlisted. So on the next page you'll see some more similarities with my grandfather, and you'll see they were both Masons, and lots of other similarities for you to read, both use of offshore islands, etc, etc. So on the next page you will see some more information. This is actually now in relation to an MP that was murdered, and his name was Mr Hugh John Simmons, and he was only murdered a few weeks after my grandfather. If I remember correctly, it's November the 15th, his murder in Beaconsfield. And basically what Mr Hugh John Simmons used to do, he used to launder money legally for the UK government to do with arms deals. And basically he ends up dead. There isn't much publication on his murder. I would say it's a semi-listed murder. Obviously I've got some information here from the author or one of his good friends. There was missing millions from the offshore, and this individual was accused of maybe stealing this 7 million. I'm sure it links to the same trust service provider in one of these offshore islands. There's many links. So on the next page now you'll see that he was a Mason, this individual as well, and so there's another connection. All 3 of these people so far are high-level Masons working for the government and high society. Now on the next page, this is another murder that I allege is linked to all of the murders. Audrey Johnson and her husband Victor were caretakers, were clearly uncovering a paedophile ring, and they got murdered in quite obviously. Very sad. On the next page you'll see another murder that I allege is linked. This is Carol Cassaire. She was a madam for a brothel for, I believe, where they used to abuse kids. It came back that she was a suicide twice. It's now been uncovered that she was certainly murdered. So I encourage the reader to please do your own independent research on what I'm alleging. On the next page you will see another murder. Now this is Mr Bulik Forsyth. He was stabbed and documents were taken, and again it's alleged that he was uncovering a paedophile ring. Please do your own independent research. There's also members of the Parliament who've been calling for reviews in these murders as well. Perhaps my grandfather is the missing link why it's unlisted. On the next page, you will see Mr. Robert Maxwell. Everyone will think, God, what are you doing now? Are you going to throw every murder at us? Believe me, there's a lot more to come. Now, Mr. Robert Maxwell, the link here is, his company is called Bishopsgates Investments Limited. and it's the same trust service provider of my family. I'm sure Mr Calvary and obviously all the other individuals. The money always goes missing and these people were involved. For example, BCCI Bank, they were the liquidators of that disaster, which is obviously laundering all of the money from the individuals from South America. Also, their offices were in Bogota, which I've shown on previous videos. So I allege Mr Maxwell was certainly murdered, and the missing pension fund, where did that go? It would have gone to the two people, or the two companies that were involved throughout the whole way, which one day I will name soon. So on the next page here, you'll see there's some information with regards to members of Parliament who've been calling for reviews into different murders that I allege. So please do your independent sort of research on this. There's many other murders that are linked to this case, and unfortunately what I allege is the Masonic Mafia that have gone to the heart of the UK government and are allowed to do whatever they want. So something else I'd like to share with the viewer is obviously Mark Thatcher is Maggie Thatcher's son. He was involved in a coup in a foreign country, and if you do your research through the offshore data leaks and follow a series of 5 or 6 companies, you'll come to Bishopsgate's Investments. So it's linked to Mr Robert Maxwell, the arms dealing. Perhaps that's why he had to go. If you look into Mr Maxwell, he was a spy and also alleged to have been a fraudster. So the sealed documents from Mark Thatcher are no longer sealed. If you do your own research, type in Mark Thatcher offshore data leak, follow a series of 6 or 7 companies, you'll come to Bishopsgate's Investments Limited. And they're the same individuals that are involved along the way of a lot of these crimes I've been alleging. Now over to the murders, you can see the murder map here. I'm alleging there's many murders linked to my grandfathers and other high society who can just basically do what they want. So if you're uncovering a story of child abuse or something they don't like, they will murder you. Same if you have too much money and you use the offshore islands, you're likely to get murdered. If your finances have been positioned in a certain place where they're in control of it, they're very likely to kill you. You can see by some of the murders here, for example, with Penny Bell, many years later a neighbour came forward and said that it was actually a hitman that was probably hired to kill her. The stabbings are all the same with Surinder Gill, and Penny Bell, Jean Bradley, Deborah Lindsay and Alison Shaughnessy. So please just do your own research. I know a lot more on this. If anyone's interested, just contact me. Please remember how the police treated me about my grandfather's murder for a year. They said that I was mad and it didn't exist. The case is now with Mopac. Think why the police have my grandfather's murder unlisted. What are they covering up? Is it what I allege, that the Masonic Mafia are able to do what they want? Thank you very much for listening. Bye-bye.